Hi, I'm Paul Doiron, and I won the Maine Literary Award in crime fiction for my novel Dead by Dawn. So, Dead by Dawn is the 12th novel in my Mike Bowditch series about a Maine game warden. I didn't write it to be read as a standalone, but I definitely intended it for to be a sort of a straight out of the gate suspense thriller. There's action in the very first chapter, and I wanted the pace to be headlong and readers just to get sucked in, whether they had read the previous books or not. Mike Bowditch is, he's not me, I should say, from the outset. He has aspects of me as a young man, especially in the early books. Um, and that people who knew me when I was involved with Maine Writers and Publishers Alliance back in the 80s and 90s can attest to that. It's an interesting challenge to write a series, an ongoing series, without either growing bored with it yourself as the author or falling into routines and formula. Readers like series because they like the characters and they like sometimes the settings and they want to see these things repeated. But for me, it's just really important to keep things fresh. And that's why, for instance, I wanted to do something very different with Dead by Dawn. That's the kind of test that I always want to set myself, is to try to do a book that I don't know if I can pull off, and to keep everything feeling fresh. But I mean, I do know Mike very well at this stage, and there's a lot of decisions that have sort of already been made that I don't need to rethink when I start a book. So that's an advantage. I don't do a formal outline. I'm, what they call a pantser, and that I write by the seat of my pants. But I do have certain things that I know about the story before I start writing. So on a pragmatic level, I know how much time has passed since the last book. I know where in the state, or sometimes out of the state now, where it's going to be set, and the month of the year. So there's some specific things about that. I also have an idea, for instance, with some of the recurring characters, if there are people that I want to bring back that haven't been in books for a while, who I know are fans, who are my fans really love. But most importantly, I always say this: what I need to know to start a book is, where is Mike Bowditch personally and professionally at the beginning of the book? Where do I want him to end at the conclusion of the book, so that I know what's at stake for him, how he's going to grow. And I actually go out of my way to try to find a story that's going to illustrate, or not just illustrate, but dramatize whatever issues he's struggling with, to sort of bring those things to the fore, and force him to confront whatever he has been dealing with up to that point. I feel a certain responsibility to portray Maine, um, the Maine that I know, or the multiple Maines that I know, I should say. And one of the one of my goals is that if people have been to Maine, they will recognize it in my books, or if they are here currently. But also to write about Maine in such a sort of a sensory, detailed kind of way, that if they live on the other side of the world, I mean, I have fans in Australia who have never been to the United States, let alone Maine, who write me and say, I feel like I've been to Maine by reading your books. Well, I always describe my research as sort of having three parts. The first is stuff that, frankly, I just already know. I think there are sometimes people will read the books and say, geez, did he have to look that bird up or whatever? It's like, no, I know that if it's July and I'm hearing a bird sing, it's going to be, at least here in mid-coast Maine, there's not a huge variety of possible choices. And so it's a red-eyed vireo. A lot of it is going to places and listening. specifically to people, and just sort of trying to get a sense of the local culture, because every place is it's all the same, but it's also different. And it's, you pick up these things that you end up excuse me, becoming really important in the context of the novel, in terms of adding verisimilitude, but adding more, helping you create a three-dimensional atmosphere, especially around the characters, so that you feel like they're occupying a fictional world that has almost the same spatial elements as the real world. There's no shortcut for it. It's like, if you don't go up to the St. John River Valley and hang out in places where you have people coming back and forth, across the river and speaking French and this sort of thing, you just won't get, like, when they'll lapse into French and when they won't. Or it really is, it's an element of research it's almost like it's not purpose driven. It's more, it's just opening yourselves up to whatever you might encounter, and not knowing if it's going to help the book or not, but sort of just trusting in that it's a good use of your time. There just came this point in my life where I realized it was either now or never. I had no more excuses not to try to sit down and begin something. And to my shock, it I ended up getting an agent for it, and she ended up getting me a 3-book contract. I've had a contract ever since. I've published a book every year since it's come out. There's not a day that goes by that I don't realize how lucky I am to have sort of had this happen to me. And I really try not ever to take it for granted. My next book is due on October 1st, and we're talking on, what is today? The 18th of July. There's no way that years ago I would never believe I could do it, but now I know I will do it. And it's because I've learned what it means to do it. This is what it's going to take, and this is what the kind of mentality I have to have in order to do the work. And so persevere. Yeah, absolutely. So I went to graduate school kind of half-heartedly, I have to say. I had kind of run out of other options, and it was a way of me sort of keeping me in the writing world without having to actually, produce anything immediately. And this was at Emerson College, which was a big program at the time, and I don't know how big it is anymore. But I had so many talented writers in my graduate school classes, and workshops and things. And I think many of them were more talented than I am. And the difference, and very few of them that went on to publish. I honestly think that the thing that distinguishes me from them was I just wanted it more, and was willing to do what I needed to do to accomplish it. And it just meant lots of hours. And, as I always say to people, lots of people want to write a novel, fewer people actually start one. Fewer than that get halfway through, and even fewer complete a first draft. But if you can complete a first draft, now you have something to work with. Now you have something to share with hopefully helpful critical voices in your life, or people you seek out. And you can revise it, but you just can't abandon this goal at any step.